Good afternoon and welcome to the CDP webinar, Best Practices in Workplace Giving. Hi everybody, I'm Bob Ottenoff, the President and CEO of the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. Thanks so much for joining us today. Employers and organizations that incorporate workplace face many challenges, such as how to increase participation in their programs, the best ways to raise money for causes and advance social impacts in their communities, and how to best measure and report on impact. Even the nonprofit organizations who benefit from these giving programs must strategize about how to maximize fundraising in the workplace and how to turn workplace donors into even larger donors. To help us answer some of these questions today, we're joined by Jim Starr and Nicole McKinney. Jim Starr is the President and CEO of America's Charities. Jim has more than 25 years of experience in the nonprofit and healthcare sectors and has served in national and field leadership roles with multi-million-dollar revenues and expense targets. He has set America's Charities focus to raise $1 billion for worthy causes by 2026. Nicole McKinney is the Senior Director of Campaign Engagement at Global Impact. Nicole completed the Executive Program in Social Entrepreneurship at Stanford University and obtained a specialization in Design Thinking and Innovation from the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business. Global Impact leads a network of international relief and development organizations to meet needs by supporting programs focused on pressing humanitarian causes, including poverty alleviation, clean water, and food security. We'll also want to be taking your questions. So after presentations from both Jim and Nicole, we'll be eager to take your questions, and you can provide us with your question by using the Q&A chat box, which is found on the bottom of the screen. Before we get started, we'd like to welcome Alice Turner of the UPS Foundation and the sponsor of today's event to welcome everyone today. Alice, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Bob, and hello, everybody. The UPS Foundation is proud to support the Center for Disaster Philanthropy and panels like this because we know that getting together and having these conversations and sharing information and best practices for smart philanthropy, we can really have a greater impact on our communities. So thank you. The UPS Foundation is the charitable arm of UPS, and we often participate in partnerships and to really add the power of our people to strengthen communities. We operate in 220 countries and territories around the world, making every community a local community. At UPS, we believe that philanthropy should really play to our company's strengths, which is why we focus on environmental stability, volunteerism, community safety, and diversity and inclusion. But to empower our employees on a local level, we have a program that's called the Community Investment Grant. And once a UPS employee volunteers 50 hours of community service within one of these focus areas, they can request grant dollars on that organization's behalf. And this really allows UPS to fund the organizations that their employees feel are the best and the strongest in their very own community. Now, UPS also participates in a workplace giving campaign. In fact, for the past 60 years, the UPS Foundation has had a strategic partnership with United Way, providing $1.4 billion in support. UPSers are proud supporters of United Way because its agencies address important issues such as early grade level reading, high school graduation rates, and financial stability for families. Now, these are areas that are not central to the mission of the UPS Foundation, but the campaign provides that avenue for our employees to contribute where they feel there is a need in their community, but otherwise would not qualify for a community investment grant. And UPS supports all of their charitable efforts by providing a 15% match on these investments, which goes to the employee's local United Way office. Last year, UPSers contributed $57.5 million to local organizations in the US, Canada, and Mexico. And then UPS, of course, matched that at $8.5 million, making an overall impact of $66 million. And with that brief intro, I'm happy to turn it back over to Bob for the discussion on best practices for workplace campaigns.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Alice Turner, for those opening remarks. Alice Turner is with the UPS Foundation. We want to start now with our two guest speakers, asking Jim Starr, he's the president and CEO of America's Charities, to give us a few remarks. Jim?
Bob, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar. Let me tell you first a little bit about who America's Charities is and what we do. The best way that I like to describe the work of our organization is that we inspire employees and organizations to support the causes they care about. And we do that by raising support and funds for worthy nonprofits, primarily through the workplace. Another aspect of our work is also conducting original research in this area, and we've been doing what we call our Snapshot Research series since 2013, where we've interviewed companies, nonprofits, and in this year, in 2017, we have surveyed employee donors directly, because after all, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are donating their financial resources and their times. So America's Charities is about connecting nonprofits, employers, and those employees, and have raised over $675 million to date. Our Snapshot Research for 2017 reached more than 1,500 employee donor respondents through a multiple number of companies and employers, representing over 18 industry groupings, and has a really good diverse representation of age groups. The report is still under development. We actually just concluded the research, and you'll be able to access the report in September, and I invite you to pre-register for that at www.charities.org/snapshot2017. So let's get into some of the findings and some of the highlights of the research that we've found this year. The first, and hopefully this isn't surprising for most of you, is that the workplace is still an effective conduit to support charitable giving and volunteering. It's still an important place for companies to engage, an important avenue for employees to engage in their community, and an important avenue of support for nonprofits. In fact, we've found that there is a high degree of interest in volunteering time in the workplace on behalf of the employees. In fact, almost 60% said that they actually volunteer through their employer, and almost half are donating money through their employees' giving campaign. And what we also found that there are incentives that employers can provide that support these programs. One is providing paid time off to volunteer, company match, making sure that there is a easy to use technology interface that can manage donations and volunteer service grants. In fact, I believe you heard all of those things earlier from the UPS Foundation as elements of their workplace giving program. Second, there is incredible value to companies that offer the opportunity for their employees to engage through their workplace, and it can be an important recruitment and retention strategy for companies. In fact, employees clearly stated that it is imperative or very important that they work for an organization where their mission and values align with their own personal mission values, and that company culture needs to be supportive of volunteering, and that there is an opportunity for the employee to support the causes that they care about most. And in fact, that is our third key finding in this latest Snapshot research, is that charitable choice is an essential component for both giving and volunteering programs. Over 3/4 say that it is imperative or very important for them to be able to choose the cause that they care about personally, that they have their own personal connection to, and that the employer should be providing the avenue or the opportunity for them to make that choice. In fact, not being able to participate either through a financial donation or through volunteering to the cause or an organization they care about is one of the leading reasons why employees don't engage in an employer's workplace giving program. So choice is a very important element as it relates to workplace giving, both in terms of a cause that they want to support, be it the environment, animals, international relief, what have you, or a particular institution. But what we're also continuing to find is that employees, as well as their employers, do have high expectations with respect to the nonprofits that they want to support, and at times it can be difficult for those nonprofits to find ways to ensure that they are either meeting those expectations or communicating directly to those employee donors that they are in fact being able to meet those expectations. In fact, we found that almost 80% said it was imperative or very important that the nonprofit that they're supporting or that they want to volunteer with can demonstrate impact and can report those results back to them. In previous research that we've done in 2014, where we spoke with nonprofits directly, the vast majority of them said it was actually a challenge to be able to demonstrate that impact. And what we mean by that is not so much, how many people have been served or how many folks have benefited from those services, but what is the impact on the actual social change that they're trying to accomplish. So it's more than just, how many families did you feed, but how have you been able to alleviate hunger in my community? And so being able to draw that direct correlation between service and impact is important for employee donors to see, but sometimes difficult for nonprofits to demonstrate. And then 70% said it was really important or imperative that there was ample information that's being provided to them as the employee donor to make sure that they can direct their funds or sign up for a volunteer activity knowing about that nonprofit, about its mission, and about its impact. And so communication is very critical in the workplace giving and volunteering experience. We have several more findings that we're gleaning from our Snapshot research, and we believe that these are in alignment with some of the research that we've conducted in the past and can be very important and beneficial for organizations seeking to either establish or strengthen or grow their own employee engagement, giving and volunteering program, as well as for nonprofits looking for ways to maximize their presence and their involvement in those campaigns as well. If you'd like to learn a little bit more, you can visit charities.org/contact. With that, Bob, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. That was Jim Starr. He's the president and CEO of America's Charities. We're going to hear next from Nicole McKinney. Nicole is the Senior Director of Campaign Engagement at Global Impact. Nicole, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Bob, for having us. And thank you to Center for Disaster Philanthropy because they're a great partner of Global Impact, and we're very excited to be here and to share today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Global Impact just to set sort of some of the context on what Global Impact does and how we've come to the place we are today, where we advise many nonprofits and corporations on corporate giving and employee engagement. We actually have our roots in workplace fundraising. We're a workplace fundraising organization that's been around for more than 60 years now. And we really started as an on-ramp for international NGOs to be able to participate in US-based giving campaigns. We had 4 original members, including CARE, which I'm sure many of you know very well. And they have stuck with us this whole time. So we've had some long-standing partners, and we've had some really great success with them. And we have more than 100 respected US-based international organizations. So we are able to really sit at the nexus of philanthropy between corporates and NGOs. And our focus really is to be able to drive success for corporations in their programs, but also to raise money for charitable causes. And so we have a pretty big emphasis on revenue diversification. One of the greatest benefits of workplace giving is the fact that it's, for the most part, unrestricted funding. And that is really critical to NGOs. If anyone on the webinar is an NGO, you know you have to keep the lights on. You have to invest in your infrastructure, and you have to be able to be strategic. And we always encourage companies to support nonprofits operating like a business so that they can make the most impact. On the next slide, you're going to see just a quick snapshot of what we've done and what we do. Since we have started our organization, we have raised nearly $2 billion, which is a wonderful feeling to know that we've been able to drive impact in so many cause areas. We work with, we have a great footprint and network. We work with 450 campaigns across the country. And we have over 10 different high impact funds. If you go back just one more second. And we work with over 100 charity partners. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our newer partners, which include advisory clients and backbone partners as well. And some of this, to facilitate some of this work, you know, we obviously ended up diversifying much more in the private sector. And so in the next area, you can kind of see 2 sort of vertical areas. And this is just to kind of show you a new line of business that we're able to launch to show you that while we were participating and supporting workplace philanthropy, we found that we just needed to be able to drive strategy a lot more. We had a period of time where workplace campaigns run a really specific way. It was sort of a formula, a recipe for success. Much of that was based on a great model that the United Way pioneered. But we were finding that companies really wanted to customize that more and to think a little bit more about how they could align their business objectives to their philanthropic objectives. So on the next slide, you can kind of see a breakdown of some of the services that we provide between our advisory line of business, which really goes into the different types of strategy, employee engagement, program support, research, customized funds, versus campaign solutions, which is really to drive success on pre-established programs. So we find that it's a really good combination for us to be able to leverage our expertise and our multiple networks to be able to drive success in this area, and to be more strategic and to think about the ways in which companies and employees can really drive impact. So on the next one, you can kind of get a sense of who we work with. So we have some great networks, including the Hilton Prize Coalition, Impact 2030, and the Global Health Council. All of these are around global philanthropy, and they engage a really diverse and fantastic set of nonprofits. And then we also, on the next slide, have a capture of some of the NGOs that we work with. As I mentioned, CARE, some of them have been with us since the beginning. Many of them are very well known, and many of them work together. So this is a great network for us, especially actually in disaster philanthropy, because we're able to leverage such a strong network that has a great presence on the ground and in communities. And then the last slide over here on the next one really shows our funder side. So we have many, many corporations that have programs established and that are revamping programs. We find that they're changing all the time. You can't just stay static and not think about where you want to go in the future. And so we work with many great funders, and we find that this multiple network of clients and partners has really pushed us to a place where we have a unique vantage point on social impact. And so that's helped us drive strategy. It's helped us think about the ways that we can lay groundwork for both the NGO side as well as the corporate side in creating successful programs, raising more money for great causes, and thinking about what's new and what's next. So I wanted to highlight next a little case study on one of the trends that we've seen in workplace giving. And it's essentially, if you go to the next slide here, it's essentially signature and high impact funds. So we found that we were able, because we have so many great pre-vetted nonprofits, we were able to think about a different way to engage donors that will allow them to think about cause areas a little bit differently. And so we decided to focus on an issue area. We broke it down into about 10 areas. They focused on global development as a whole. So we had women and girls, malaria, clean water, and we chose 4 of our best-in-class charities in each of those areas. So they had great programs, they had on-the-ground resources. We had a set of criteria that we created. And we found that this was helpful because it was a different way to approach giving. So it gave our funder partners the ability to think about promoting causes versus just promoting giving. And it gave them sort of a platform to create awareness, to create opportunities to educate their employees on the issue areas. It was a way for them to engage younger donors. Millennial donors respond to cause and issue areas a lot more than they do to a specific charity or charity loyalty. So we have found great success there, and we use them a lot in the private sector. They're very popular in that sense. And we also launch sort of on-demand funds as well when a disaster strikes or when there's a significant crisis on hand. We just launched a new fund that's going live, I believe, this week, and it's our Refugees Fund. And so that was a great one for us to be able to look at what is going on in the world now, what employees are talking about, what they want to do, and what we're hearing from our funder partners as well in how they want to give, how they want to support, and what different ways they can educate themselves on a specific issue area. So the next one is going to focus a little bit on something more custom. So the idea of the high impact funds is great. We found great traction with that. But we found a lot of companies that wanted to think about customizing that even further. And so we started dabbling in signature funds, what we call signature funds. And essentially it's the same concept, but you can customize it to your corporate needs. And so we found this is a really great way to engage companies with varying goals. So you might have a really specific population or stakeholder that you're going after, or you might want to be sort of narrowing in on spotlighting what you're trying to do with your philanthropic programs. And there's no wrong reason to do it. There's no way that you can do this wrong. But I think that what we've seen lately is that many companies want to just be more specific to the work that they're doing, tie that work back to what their employees and what they as a company stand for. And so that's why I think we've seen a lot more of these signature funds take off. And so they can be a limited time period where they focus on them. It can be something that they keep forever. We've worked in both ways. So I have a little case study on this. And this is a company that I'm calling EcoCorp. So we're anonymizing them a little bit. And they had a company that they acquired who was really, really connected to Water for People, one of our former partners. And so we wanted to give them a chance to integrate their new employees into their current programs. That was sort of their goal. And so they also had a really great history of supporting water, clean water access. And so we were able to work with them to think about their goals and create a specific fund that supported Water for People, that had a whole communication marketing plan around it, and that was integrated into their fall giving campaign. And so this one was a really specific way for them to engage a new employee set and bring them into the fold with their current employees and kind of unify and help them raise funds together. And so the result for them was great. They raised over $30,000 for Water for People. They're really, really excited. They're one of our great partners. And we've actually had other situations where a company, for example, we have a company that we work with that's in the hotel industry, and they are very active in preventing exploitation of human trafficking, exploitation of children, and sex labor. And so they actually created a fund similar to this one that engaged multiple stakeholders, engaged their employees as well as the customer base. And their fund was something that supported multiple charities all around anti-human trafficking work. And they were able to really hone in on their core verticals and what they stood for in terms of their corporate goals and their social impact goals, and really think about bringing those two things together. So it's a really great way to think about how you can give something different to your employees. It's what we would call some more sort of semi-restricted funding, because you want it to support that mission area, but it's still focused on the cause itself. And I think to Jim's point, it's really important when you're thinking about doing something like this, to think about what your employees want. Do a survey, poll them, talk to them, listen. The successful programs that we see do that, and they do it well, and they're able to leverage their employee interest with what their corporation does. So we always say, do something like this, it's great, but also keep other channels and avenues open for employees to participate in other ways. And when you do needs, but you're still having a strong voice in conveying what your company stands for and what you're looking to foster in terms of employee engagement. So that is all I have for you today, but looking forward to questions. So thank you, Bob. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicole, for that interesting presentation. I want to remind all of our listeners that you can ask a question to Jim and Nicole. Just go to the chat box at the bottom of your screen, type in your question, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can during this next half hour. Jim, I'd like to start with a couple of questions for you. It was a fascinating study that that you presented a while ago, and I'm wondering was there anything in the survey that particularly caught your attention, that maybe surprised you, that was something you weren't ready for, or a trend that it indicated?
Hello.
It seems like we've lost Jim's audio. Jim, can you hear us now? Jim, can you hear? Nicole, can you hear us okay?
Yep, I'm still here with you.
Okay, Nicole's here. We've lost Jim's audio. So while we're trying to connect Jim back to the program, I'll go to you, Nicole, and ask you a question about your presentation. You talked a lot about customization, about partner solutions, campaign solutions. Do you find that do you find that surprising, that you need to customize, and what's all that about? Why do you need to do so much customization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's mostly the private sector where we see the customization is king, right? So, every company has their own unique value proposition in the marketplace. And we find that many companies approach employee engagement and philanthropy as a retention tool. So they want their initiatives to be unique. They want to create a really great culture for their employees to be able to participate with them and to do good with them. So that's why we find that customization is really important to them. And honestly, it boils down to success. If you're not thinking about your unique set of circumstances, your unique goals, then you're not necessarily going to be successful. It isn't so easy. This is definitely a difficult channel to raise funds in, to meet everyone's needs. We hear that all the time. And so you have to really step back and think strategically and think about it in a way that facilitates multiple viewpoints and diverse perspectives. So that's what we see a lot, and it allows us to really increase impact, because the more successful your programs are, the happier your employees are, the more impact you're going to have ultimately with them.
I mean, I guess in a way that suggests a deeper level of engagement by the corporations who are active with you, but it also suggests, though, that the corporation has developed a strategy, that it kind of knows where it wants to go. Do you find that to be the case, that you're dealing with, in a sense, a more sophisticated client than we might have imagined in the past?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would say the level of sophistication has greatly increased over the last 10 years. And we're really seeing companies step up their game and really get integrated into the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, which I don't think we would have said with the Millennial Development Goals. They are really thinking about how they're going to have their programs plug into those bigger channels, and thinking about partnerships in different ways. So they're definitely more strategic. We also see companies that aren't, quite there yet. There's definitely a whole spectrum, and we're happy to work with any of them, no matter where you are. We've kind of created a continuum that you can jump in and out of different spaces, depending on where you are. And often you have to go backwards to go forwards. So sometimes the program's not working and you have to start over, or your goals have shifted and you have to start over. So it's really important for us to think about what the unique needs of a partner would be, and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, so that we can advise them best.
So a question for both of you, and I hear we now have Jim back with us. So Nicole, you first, and then Jim, we'll get you back into the dialogue here. So are you finding that your clients, do you call them clients or customers or partners, I guess is the word you were using. Do you find that you're dealing primarily with sophisticated partners who are already deeply engaged in activities, and employee giving is one more piece of a bigger activity? Or are you still dealing with partners who are looking for that first thing and thought that employee giving was a good way to get started?
Both. A lot of our relationships are probably more on the sophisticated end of the spectrum, where they've been doing this for a long time, and now they're actually changing tactics and thinking about how to really weave their corporate social responsibility efforts into every aspect of their business. And those are actually really fun and challenging for us, because there are areas that we hadn't gone before that now we are able to gain expertise in and really understand their goals better. But we also have clients where they just want to do some good, and they want to be able to offer their employees a way to do good together. And we love those clients as well, because we're able to just say, hey, you got to start somewhere. So let's start here. Let's talk to your employees. Let's think about what you want to do, and let's just have fun with it. And both of them are great. And like I said before, you kind of see them go in and out of a continuum. So you can advance that and keep going and really make it a part of your business strategy. Or you can kind of just focus on the philanthropic side of it, and just once a year, you're doing something great for nonprofits. And we see both are successful. There's not a right way to do it in that sense. But I think that today we are seeing more of the private sector step up in terms of understanding that they have a responsibility to be more a part of the social fabric and to solve social issues, and that it's not just about selling their product. They actually have a responsibility to the community and to people. And so we think that's really important as well, and that's why we're happy to connect them and support them.
Jim, same question to you. How would you describe your partners in terms of their sophistication and their commitment to employee giving as part of a broader program?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Bob. And let me apologize I must have had some kind of audio malfunction earlier, but I am back. And our experience is very similar to Nicole's. We have a broad range of employer clients with respect to their, we'll call it sophistication in philanthropy. For example, we have some clients who obviously have been involved in the wide range of corporate philanthropy, from grants that they make to employee giving to sponsoring volunteer events and things of that nature. And what we're finding with those clients is a desire to be more integrated with their efforts, moving from kind of more of a scattershot effort where they're responding to requests for support from different nonprofits and maybe supporting a gala here and making a grant there, letting employees, donate wherever, although choice is still very important, to trying to center those efforts and align them towards their CSR goals, to their business objectives, and create some more continuity and alignment between all of those outreach efforts. At the same time, also finding ways to ensure that they're providing choice to their employees for that engagement. And we have some clients who are relatively new to community support and philanthropy, and may have supported events or maybe organized their employees for a 5K or something to that nature, and looking to kind of really deepen their engagement. And some just want to provide an easy solution that allows their employees to give back to nonprofits, and maybe they have a modest matching gift program that goes along with that. And so we've got solutions that can address that whole wide range of need. We are seeing what's very interesting and exciting are more and more smaller companies are getting involved in not just corporate philanthropy, but also employee engagement and giving and volunteering programs. It's not something that we used to see 5-10 years ago, where it was mostly dominated by large companies. There are more and more smaller businesses, even under 100 employees, that are finding ways to launch their own programs as well. So the needs are diverse.
Okay, thank you. We've got quite a few questions now from our audience. If you want to ask a question of our panelists, just use the chat box at the bottom of the screen. And so, Nicole and Jim, I'm going to ask you to give short answers here so that we can get to all the many questions we have. So keep your answers, if you could, to just a few sentences. Nicole, let's start. I'd like to have both of you respond to this, and we'll ask you to go first, Nicole. And this question comes from a listener who says, do you find your on-demand campaigns take away from your scheduled or signature campaigns, therefore resulting in fewer donations? And this is of particular interest to those of us in the disaster philanthropy activity area, because we often hear that or hear questions about whether donations to disasters take away from donations that someone might be making to their favorite charity. But this question is about on-demand campaigns. Nicole?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And the answer is that it varies. So it depends. And that's a great point, Bob, as well, with disaster. Typically, we do not see things like a disaster happening take away from regularly scheduled giving. Workplace giving is really cyclical for the most part, and we find that employees kind of come to expect a specific time of year. They're going to plan out their distribution or their donations, and they're going to think about the organizations they're supporting for the year. And it's a very open enrollment, planned out type of activity for them. Something on demand that occurs like a disaster is a much more emotional appeal. So if you have a disaster occurring, you find that people just want to give to support, and it doesn't necessarily impact other sort of cyclical campaigns that you might have going. The time that we've seen that not be true has been if they occur at the same time. That can sometimes skew it a little bit, but for the most part, I would say it doesn't typically affect it. And we are seeing more companies do more sort of mini on-demand campaigns throughout the year versus just focusing once a year.
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, we've seen the same thing, Bob, and Nicole's spot on. It really does depend on the timing. For example, if a major disaster happened right at the launch of an employee giving campaign in the fall, that could potentially impact contributions to that campaign. If it's a defined period, we're going to donate through October and November, there may be some impact or cannibalization with that. The other time that you might see some cannibalization is if you're operating a year-round employee giving campaign. In other words, it's always open. That if there was a planned campaign event and a disaster struck around that same time, it could potentially impact that as well. But for the most part, you're not going to see much of that cannibalization unless you've got that timing issue.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question from a listener with a really interesting question here. In our small community, it feels like there is a possible barrier to interacting with potential employers about starting an employee campaign. Our relationships with the top officials in most organizations are very personal. Do you have any suggestions on how to approach this? Either of you have a point of view on that?
Sure, yeah, so I'm gonna assume that it's coming from someone who might be with a nonprofit. So that's very true. We do see a lot of, especially legacy programs that have come out of an executive that had a board relationship, for example. And I mean, that's an example where I think those programs were set up to do good. They did good. We're seeing fewer of them, to be honest, just because that's the interest of one person. And it's great to rally a person around your interests. That's why peer-to-peer fundraising is so successful these days. But if you only have that represented, then you're not necessarily meeting multiple needs of everyone. So we're seeing more companies stepping back a little bit, and they might keep a relationship like that, but they're going to expand outside of it. So I would say if you're a nonprofit, which I'm assuming you are, the best bet for you would be to find some advocates at that company, people that already support your mission, that you can say, we have these amazing engaged donors that support us. They volunteer with us, they donate to us. You already have a base. We're already connected to you. We just want to make that relationship better. We find that's really successful for some of our organizations in our alliance that go in and they already have donors supporting them, but they can make that relationship even better. And they can just connect the donor in a way that they've never been connected before. So that would be my advice, but I'll let Jim speak to it as well.
Well, Jim, I want to go on to another question because we're getting a fair number of questions. We want to get through this, get to as many as we can. And this listener wants to know what percentage of employees need to participate in a program in order for the workplace giving program to be considered a success. You have some goals that you set for your partners?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I'll give the easy answer first. And that really, it depends on how the company wants to define its success. But let me provide this answer. A good benchmark to strive for is about a third of your workforce participating either by donating time or money. And we've seen many employer clients of ours exceed that benchmark, but we also have some that are a little bit behind, and there are other variables or other factors that'll impact that. Sometimes the larger the organization you are, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to get a higher percentage of engagement. The nature of your workforce could also be a factor that will impact your participation rates. So it really depends upon what industry you're in, how large your organization is. The design of your program will also impact the participation rates. Do you have incentives like matching gifts, volunteer service grants, paid time off for volunteering? Those types of things will drive increased engagement as well. But if you want a straight line percentage, I'd strive for about 30%.
Nicole, I was surprised again at all of the various not only the customization, but also the incentives that you offer an employer who gets engaged in your program. It sounds hard, it sounds complicated, it sounds like it's a little bit of a pull. Do you feel that way sometimes?
Workplace giving is one of the most complex fundraising channels ever created. It's not easy to understand. Often when we're working with a new nonprofit who is just entering the field to see, will this work for me? We say, all right, this is a warning. This is not easy to understand. I think it's becoming better. It's becoming a little bit easier. It's just complex. Whenever you're dealing with an entity and you're dealing with employees' personal data and funds flowing in and out and multiple partners and hundreds and sometimes thousands of charities, it's going to get complex. And so we hear that a lot from the corporates too, like, this is complex, please help me. So we're happy to help. It's not something that can totally be untangled. So I would say the best approach is really to think about your top line goals. You're always going to have, whether you're corporate or a nonprofit, you're always going to have something that's just going to be frustrating. There's no way to get around that. But if you're keeping your eyes sort of on your top line goals, what you want to achieve, you can drive towards those goals. and you have partners that can help you do it, then that's your best bet. And whether you're customizing or you're kind of just starting out with some turnkey solutions, you know, focusing on that and really listening to your employees and co-creating with them will set you up for success.
This is a question for both of you. This comes from a listener. If choice is so important for employees, what mechanisms are employers using to facilitate employee giving? Does this mean a diminished role for organizations such as United Way, or are they moving to offer more choice as well? Jim, why don't you get us started on that question?
Sure, I'll dive right in. So there are a lot of times I hear the variant of this question is if choice is really important, but we've got priorities for CSR, how do you do that? How do you offer choice yet also help channel support and donations to perhaps causes or organizations that are important to the company? And one of those ways is through some of the incentive programs that we've mentioned before. You could align your matching gifts or your volunteer service grants or things of that nature to featured cause areas or nonprofits for the company, and have your programs focused on that to incentivize participation with those fields, but also provide the opportunity for open choice. The United Way question is interesting, and I would suggest that it really depends upon the local United Way's approach to their workplace giving program in their community. Some do allow more choice in their programs, others fairly much restrict it to United Way or United Way charities that are focused on their community impact areas. So it really does depend upon the company and the company's objectives. And as Nicole has mentioned frequently, the need to solicit input and engagement from your employees and what a local United Way may be offering in terms of their own workplace giving program.
Nicole, I'm going to go on to another question here. Here's how it goes. We run a large $1 million university campaign for area charities. Our higher givers are aging out, and few younger donors are replacing them. Do you see less support for these campaigns from younger employees?
That is a great question, and something we actually see a lot, because we are seeing donors that are the high givers. They're kind of supporting the campaign, aging out or retiring, and we're seeing the younger donors giving in very, very different ways. So you are not alone in that. It is not an easy problem to address, though. I would say that you have to start to step back and think about those younger donors and what they're looking for. I would say most of them aren't used to participating in a campaign like that. I think most of them are used to getting asked by a friend or thinking about, you know, something they saw or read in an article that moved them to give. So they have different motivations than the older donors. I would say this is a really good one, and I would love if CDP could pass on my information after this, because I'd love to keep talking about it. But think about making maybe a council. The thing you want to avoid is waiting too long and then all of your older donors are gone and all of your younger donors are there and you're not left with anything to bridge the gap. So I would say pair them up. A lot of younger donors can learn a lot from older donors and why they give, and there's stories behind it, and stories really drive it for them. So thinking about creating maybe a little council of sort of young, up-and-coming folks, maybe call it like a philanthropy mentorship program or something like that, and really listen to what it is that they want, and then also listen to what it is that motivated the older donors that are aging out, and how can you sort of still facilitate those donors while creating opportunities for the new ones.
Bob,
Jim,
this is Jim, real quick.
Jim, did your survey find out anything on this question?
Yeah, it did. And in fact, what drives donor motivation, really the program elements for a workplace giving program are not that much different for a millennial audience than it is for an older donor audience. Those program drivers are basically the same. Anecdotally, I will tell you, though, that there is a shift, though, from older donors' preference for institutions where younger donors are more cause-driven rather than an organization or a particular institution. And I can tell you, we've done some work for companies with a large millennial workforce, and by implementing some of these best practices for them, increased their engagement from, it was, I don't know, in the teens in terms of level of participation, to something like over 50% employee engagement. Their workforce was 85% millennials. They increased the dollars raised sevenfold in 1 year, just by putting in place some of these best practices that we've been talking about. So the millennial donor is there, and they will engage and they will donate. And in fact, as they start to move up in the workforce, you're going to see their average gift size increase as well. So it's something that is, you know, out there, particularly as you're looking at your older donors and moving on, finding ways to get those replaced. What we're finding is the millennial donors are ready to step up and are stepping up.
We've got time for one more question, and I want to make it about disasters. We all know that most disaster giving occurs within a few days after a disaster takes place, and that disaster giving after that drops precipitously. One of our long-term goals at the Center for Disaster Philanthropy is to get people to begin thinking about planning, preparation, mitigation, all those things you can do to lessen the impact of a disaster, and then to really understand that disaster philanthropy really takes the long-term thinking, that so much of the disaster work occurs weeks and months and sometimes years after a disaster occurs. Do either of you have examples of how you're attracting disaster giving that thinks about the full life cycle?
Sure, Bob, I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
One of the things that we've done in partnership with the Center for Disaster Philanthropy is actually established a standing disaster cause fund that can be activated immediately when disaster strikes, and can be present on employers' workplace giving sites. And what's nice about this approach is that it is designed to take advantage of that kind of initial emotional reaction and appeal that drives disaster fundraising, as you said, yet will present a group through the fund in partnership with CDP of vetted charities that are focused on the long-term issues and impacts and needs of a disaster, so that an employee who wants to support disaster relief can know that their dollars are going to be used incredibly wisely, locally, and where the need is most present over the life cycle of a disaster, which is more than just standing up a shelter, handing out bottles of water and blankets and providing cots for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but really helping that community recover from the disaster.
Thanks, Jim. Nicole, a thought on disaster philanthropy?
Yeah, happy to share. So because we have so many organizations, just humanitarian organizations that are on the ground already, we just often get a lot of questions from corporations who want to stand up a fund really quickly, or just respond in some way. And typically they're looking for advice depending on where the disaster has occurred. Because we know our members very well, and we've sort of created a great process that we can quickly sort of do vetting to know where they are and who's there long term and who's responding. We have a pretty great process where we can quickly stand up a fund. So if a disaster is robust enough that it requires a lot, and we're getting a lot of demand on it, we'll stand up a fund pretty quickly and push it out. And the recipients that we choose for that fund really are the ones that have been in country, know it well, have established partners so they know how to get shipments in and out, they know who to tap, they have relationships with the local government there, and they're going to stay after the disaster. So they're already invested in that community, and that's really, really critical, because as you mentioned, so much of this work is not the 3 days after when people are sort of reacting to it. It's going to be months and years, and it's going to take a lot of rebuilding. And so we encourage our corporations that are reaching out to to look at those organizations, and we actually try to give as much content as possible. And many of them do 1 year out updates. They do 6 months, multiple years. So we're still giving out Nepal updates, Haiti updates, and we're still reporting back on that because, as you mentioned, resiliency is a big part of that. So we want to make sure that they are even more resilient in the future, so that if something strikes again, that they don't have as much of an impact. So we find that that's really helpful, is to really think about who you're funding, who you're engaging.
We've got just a couple of minutes left in this webinar, and I want to give both of you a chance for closing remarks. Nicole, you first. In a minute or so, what would you like us to leave with when we think about employee giving and in particular workplace giving?
Sure, yeah, happy to. So I would just say for companies who are looking to get advice on giving, there are a couple things. One is to really think about and know your areas of focus. How does your actual mission as a company connect to the impact you want to leave in the world? The more that's integrated into the culture, the more employees will naturally be engaged with whatever programs you decide to launch. And be sure to listen, be sure to keep multiple options open so that you're meeting multiple needs, and give opportunities to educate. We see that when we see companies give their employees or empower their employees to educate themselves on issue areas, especially if it pertains to the work that they do or the work that the company does, the engagement just skyrockets. And so think about that. Think about sharing. I'll do a quick plug. Both Jim and I will be at an event called Charities at Work. It's an employee engagement event. It's peer-to-peer for corporations to just share best practices on this very topic. So share with your peers, learn from them, see what works for them, think about what works for you, and just always keep an open mind with that and be flexible and nimble.
Jim, closing remarks?
Thanks, Bob. I'll keep it really brief. On the topic of workplace giving, while Nicole mentioned there are a lot of moving parts associated with it, and it can be complicated. It's not rocket science or nothing magical to really have a very successful employee engagement program. You want to make sure that you're following some of the best practices. Do some research. You can find information on charities.org with our Snapshot Research, many other great resources out there for you to kind of catalog what some of these best practices are. But if you put those in place, you focus on providing authentic leadership and support for your program, that you have employee engagement in your program, helping, as Nicole mentioned, co-create, as well as providing that choice. You make it easy to participate, you make it fun to participate, people will participate, and wish you much success in all those endeavors.
Okay, I want to thank our two guests today for their expertise in today's webinar. Nicole McKinney is the Senior Director of Campaign Engagement at Global Impact. Jim Starr is the President and CEO of America's Charities. Thank you both for your participation today. I want to thank my colleagues at CDP, Kathy and Anna and Jasmine, for their help in producing this program. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to call us about either this webinar or your disaster philanthropy work. You can call us at the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. Thanks so much for your time and attention today. Good day.